Hi guys, Fred Wellman with the MeidasTouch Network, host of On Democracy with FPWellman, and an Army veteran. And so this week I'm a little bit dismayed. If you've seen anything on the right-wing news world, there's a story blowing up about how 20 homeless veterans were evicted from a hotel in upstate New York. It was all come out in a story in the New York Post last Friday, and the source of it was a woman named Sharon Tony Finch, who runs an organization called the YIT Foundation in upstate New York. Her claim was that veterans she was paying to house in a hotel had been evicted to make room for migrants being bussed up from New York City who could pay a lot more money to get the rooms. And so the hotels kicked them out. It was quickly picked up. I said the New York Post picked it up, and then it just went viral. And of course, Fox and Friends had to pick it up, and they had a guy named Brian Maher, who is a local state assemblyman and a supporter of the YIT Foundation. And he saw his moment to jump on Fox and Friends and talk about it.
20 homeless veterans have been kicked out of an upstate New York hotel to make room for migrants being bused there from New York City. The CEO of the YIT Foundation, which is helping to house those vets, tells the New York Post, whether you agree with asylum seekers being here or not, we can't just ignore these veterans that are in our charge that we are supposed to protect. We need to put them first. New York State Assemblyman and spokesman for the foundation, Brian Maher, joins me now. Brian, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure.
Listen, first of all, tell us what the YIT Foundation is and why they're involved in this.
No, it's amazing. I get to join you this morning and talk about a personal friend, someone who's an American hero, Sharon Tony Finch. And this is an individual who was an Iraq combat veteran who was part of a motorcade that was annihilated by an IED. This is someone who was wounded in her second tour, and when she came home, she needed help. One of the things that happened to her while she was still in the military is she got pregnant. She had a preemie. It was 1 pound. His name was Yerrick Israel Tony, YIT. 7 months later, she lost that child, and she lived through an experience where she needed help with bills, transportation, and that's what inspired her to start her foundation. But when she helped people that were similar to her situation, she also found out that there was a lot of veterans that were homeless, that needed shelter, transportation, and medical appointments. Yeah. So YIT, they really expanded their mission to cover homeless veterans.
So you can see, they talked about it. And it quickly went from this story about how it was the fault of New York City to everything. And man, the pile-on came in from Republican politicians to the big talking people on the Twitter of the right side, everything you can imagine. Kevin McCarthy chimed in. It went from being the fault of Mayor Adams to Governor Hochul to, of course, President Biden himself. And the guy, Joey Jones, who's the contributor, former Marine apparently on Fox News, didn't miss his chance to go on Faulkner Harris's show and talk about how this is exactly President Biden's fault.
What he's saying is that Mayor Eric Adams would choose to endanger the welfare of our U.S. veterans, and that speaks volumes to what a debacle this has become.
You know, a president that would leave Americans stranded in Afghanistan probably doesn't see the onus to take care of 20 veterans in a hotel. And I hate to say it, but that's just the absolute truth of it.
Wow. That takes my breath away. Because you would think that he would have gained some sort of sensitivity, knowledge, and perspective from all the criticism he's gotten since
Harris has
Afghanistan.
been doing it for 50 years.
Yeah, it's an interesting clip because you notice she was reading a quote blaming Mayor Adams, and then Joey jumped in to say it was President Biden's fault because, you know, he just doesn't give a damn about veterans. Now, I'm going to interject here on that one. President Biden is the first president since Eisenhower to send a child to war. Mrs. Biden, Dr. Biden, set up an organization with Mrs. Obama many years ago that she still runs today called Joining Forces, which has been instrumental in turning around veteran unemployment, homelessness, and a number of other programs by using the power of the White House to help veterans. So just the accusation that Biden doesn't care about veterans, who is the father of a veteran who passed away from brain cancer, is so patently ridiculous, it's exhausting. But that's the thing. That ain't all. Because here's what happened. Thankfully, we still have really good local news organizations like Mid-Hudson News, based up the river from New York. Mid-Hudson News started digging into this story, and what did they find? When they started asking hard questions, they got wrong answers. Cold turkey may be great on sandwiches, but there's a better way to break your bad habits. And I'm not talking about some weird mind voodoo or a wacky message board. No, we're talking about our sponsor, Fume, and they look at the problem in a different way. Now, not everything in a bad habit is bad. So instead of a drastic, uncomfortable change, why not just remove the bad from your habit? Fume is an innovative, award-nominated device that does just that. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air. And instead of chemicals, Fume uses all natural, delicious flavors. You get it. Instead of bad, Fume is good. It's a habit you're free to enjoy and makes replacing your bad habit easy. Your Fume comes in an adjustable airflow dial and is designed with movable parts and magnets for fidgeting, giving your fingers a lot to do, which is helpful for de-stressing anxiety while breaking your bad habit. The first time I used Fume, I was shocked at how flavorful and fresh it tasted. It's easy to hold and perfectly balanced, and quite honestly, extremely fun to fidget with. The real wood material and sleek design definitely classes it up, and I feel pretty darn cool holding it. Stopping is something we all put off because it's hard, but switching to Fume is easy, enjoyable, and honestly, even fun. Fume has served over 100,000 customers and has thousands of success stories. There's no reason that can't be you. So join Fume, accelerating humanity's breakup from destructive habits by picking up the Journey Pack today. Now, head to tryfume.com and use code FRED to save 10% when you get the Journey Pack today. That's tryfum.com and use code FRED to save an additional 10% off your order today. The woman actually produced a fake receipt. You can see it in the screen, a fake receipt from the hotel. So the news reporters went to the hotel. Hotel has no record of veterans ever even staying at the hotel, no matter the fact that receipt wasn't from their hotel. It even had different fonts and different numbers. And then she started telling lies about how she had a credit card on file with another hotel where they could run her credit card. The hotel denied ever doing that. They said it's against their policy to save hotels. No one could find these veterans. So she actually produced a couple of veterans to be interviewed by this assemblyman, Mr. Maher, and then a couple of news reporters. Well, then the whole thing fell apart. Just this morning, it came out, thanks to the Mid-Hudson News, the veterans were homeless veterans in an actual shelter who were recruited and paid to lie and say that they had been kicked out of this hotel. The entire story is a fabrication. There's not an actual ounce of truth. None of it's real. And I'll have to say this, I'll give credit to the New York Post. New York Post did go back and update their story. You can see it. And they showed that the lady was lying. But this story was everywhere. My Twitter replies were full all week of, oh, sure, you libs. What do you think of these 20 veterans who got evicted? And let me tell you a secret, guys. I've been working on veterans homelessness issues for over a decade and almost a decade and a half with a bunch of organizations, to include the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans. Anyone who does veterans work can see the story was fake from the beginning. It's not how we house veterans. But man, it made a great story to attack everyone all the way up to the President of the United States. And the entire thing was fake.
Quick update on a story from earlier this week about homeless veterans being displaced from a hotel in Newburgh, New York, to make room for migrants. We're now looking into new reports that a veterans advocate misled lawmakers and media outlets about a story that some homeless men may have been hired to pose as veterans. We've reached out to the organization for a statement, but so far have not heard back.
Do you think the assemblyman's going to tell the truth? Because, Assemblyman Maher is now calling for an investigation because it does smell like fraud, because the lady raised a lot of money off this story, as you always do when the right-wing ecosphere gets hold of something. Folks, they just keep using veterans for tools and pawns. This is even as we tell this story, there's a 22% cut for the Veterans Affairs, the Department of Veterans Affairs, baked into the Republican debt ceiling limit, which they keep lying about. And you can see previous videos I've done about that. The Republicans only care about veterans when we're convenient political tools. And this fake story and this fake news proves it. I'm Fred Wellman. Catch my show On Democracy with FPWellman every Friday night at 11 p.m. Eastern, right here on the MeidasTouch Network. This next show is a humdinger. See you soon.
Hey Midas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.